My name is Irene Willette, and I'm 32 years old. 5 years ago, my sister told my parents I dropped out of medical school. She lied, and that single lie cost me my entire family. They cut me off, they blocked my number, they skipped my residency graduation. They weren't at my wedding. For 5 years, I was no one's daughter. Then last month, my sister was rushed into the emergency room, bleeding, unconscious, dying. The trauma team paged the chief surgeon. The doors opened, and when my mother saw the name on the white coat walking toward her daughter's stretcher, she grabbed my father's arm so hard it left bruises. Before we get into this, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if this story truly resonates with you. And drop your location and local time in the comments. I want to know where you are right now. Now let me take you back to the fall of 2019. To a kitchen table in Hartford, Connecticut, and the last time my father ever looked at me with pride. Growing up, there were 2 daughters in the Ouellette house, but only one who mattered. My sister Monica is 3 years older. She came out of the womb performing school plays, student council, the girl who could talk to any adult at any dinner party and make them laugh. My parents, Jerry and Diane Ouellette, Hartford, Connecticut, salt of the earth middle class, adored her for it. Dad managed a manufacturing plant. Mom did part-time bookkeeping. They valued 2 things above all else: appearances and obedience. Monica delivered both, flawlessly, every single day. I was the quiet one. The one with her nose in a biology textbook at Thanksgiving, while Monica held court at the table. I wasn't rebellious. I wasn't difficult. I was simply invisible. There's a difference between being forgotten and never being seen in the first place. Here's a small example. 8th grade, I made it to the state science fair, the only kid from our school. Same weekend, Monica had a community theater performance. One guess where my parents went. When I came home with a second-place ribbon, Dad glanced at it and said, "That's nice, Reenie." He didn't ask what my project was about. He never did. I told myself it didn't hurt. I told myself I didn't need the attention. I poured everything into my grades, my AP classes, my applications. I figured if I couldn't be the daughter they noticed, I'd be the daughter they couldn't ignore. And for one brief, shining moment, I was. The day I got accepted into Oregon Health and Science University's medical program, 3,000 miles from Hartford, something shifted. For the first time in my life, my father looked at me, really looked at me, and said 5 words I'd waited 18 years to hear. But I'll get to that. First, you need to understand what Monica did when she realized the spotlight was moving. The acceptance letter came on a Tuesday in April. I remember because Monica was visiting for the weekend. She was 22, working as a marketing coordinator at a mid-level firm in Stamford. Fine job, fine life. Fine was Monica's ceiling, though she'd never admit it. Dad read the letter at the kitchen table. His eyebrows went up. "Oregon Health and Science," he said, slow, like he was tasting the words. "That's a real medical school." Then he looked at me. "Maybe you'll make something of yourself after all, Reenie." It wasn't a compliment, not really. But it was the closest thing to one I'd ever gotten from him, and I held on to it like oxygen. Mom called Aunt Ruth that night. She called her sister. She called 2 neighbors. "Irene got into medical school. Can you believe it?" Her voice had a pitch I'd never heard before. Pride, genuine, undiluted pride, directed at me. At dinner, I glanced across the table at Monica. She was smiling, but it was the kind of smile that stops at the mouth. Her eyes were doing something else entirely. Calculating, measuring, recalibrating. I know that now. At the time, I just thought she was tired from the drive. That week, Monica started calling me more. 2, 3 times a week. "How's packing going? Who's your roommate? What's Portland like?" She asked about my schedule, my classmates, my professors. She remembered every name I mentioned. I thought my sister was finally seeing me. I thought maybe my getting into med school had unlocked something between us. Respect, connection, whatever it is that normal sisters have. I was feeding her ammunition. Every detail, every name, every vulnerability. And I handed it all over with a grateful smile. Third year of medical school. That's when everything cracked open. My roommate, my best friend, was a woman named Sarah Mitchell. She'd grown up in foster care, no family to speak of, and she was the single reason I survived first year. When I called home once during a brutal anatomy exam week and Mom said, "Can't talk, Reenie, Monica's having a rough day at work," it was Sarah who sat on our apartment floor with me and said, "Their loss. Now get up. We have cadavers to memorize." Sarah was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer in August of my third year. No family, no support system, just me. I went to the dean's office the next morning, explained the situation. He approved a formal leave of absence, 1 semester, caregiver status, paperwork filed, spot held. I would come back in January. It was all documented, all legitimate. I moved into the spare bedroom at Sarah's apartment, drove her to chemo, held her hand in the oncology ward at 3 in the morning when the pain got so bad she couldn't breathe. I called Monica to tell her. I don't know why. Maybe I still believed she was the sister she'd been pretending to be. I told her about Sarah, about the leave, about the plan to return in the spring. Monica's voice was syrup. "Oh my God, Reenie, I'm so sorry. Take all the time you need. I won't say a word to Mom and Dad. I know they'd just worry." 3 days later, she called our parents. I don't know the exact words she used that night. I wouldn't learn the full scope of her lie until 5 years later, when it unraveled in the one place none of us expected. But the damage was instant. The call came at 11 at night. I was sitting in a plastic chair next to Sarah's hospital bed. She'd had a bad reaction to the latest round of chemo, and they'd admitted her overnight. My phone lit up. "Dad, your sister told us everything." His voice was flat, arctic. The dropping out, the boyfriend, all of it. "Dad, that's not—" "Don't. Monica showed us the messages. She showed us proof." I pressed my hand against the wall to steady myself. "What messages? What proof?" "Dad, I'm sitting in a hospital right now. I'm taking care of my friend. Monica said you'd say exactly that." A pause. "She said you'd have a story ready." My mother got on the line. Her voice was shaking. "How could you lie to us for a whole year, Irene?" "Mom, please, listen to me. I filed a leave of absence. I can show you the paperwork. I can give you the dean's number." "Enough," Dad again. "Don't call this house until you're ready to tell the truth. You've embarrassed this family enough." The line went dead. I sat on that hospital floor for 20 minutes. Sarah's IV beeped on the other side of the curtain. My phone screen still showed the call duration, 4 minutes and 12 seconds. That's how long it took my parents to erase me. 20 minutes later, a text from Monica. "I'm sorry, Reenie. I had to tell them. I couldn't keep your secret anymore." She wasn't sorry. She'd just executed the most precise strike of her life, and she'd done it with a broken heart emoji as a signature. I was 3,000 miles from Hartford. I had $46 in my checking account, and I had just become no one's daughter. I tried. I need you to know that. I tried everything I could from 3,000 miles away with no money and a dying friend in the next room. Over the next 5 days, I called my parents 14 times. The first 3 went to voicemail. By the 4th, Dad's number was blocked. Mom blocked me 2 days later. I sent 2 emails, one short, one long. The long one had my leave of absence paperwork attached as a PDF. I included the dean's direct phone number. I included Sarah's oncologist's name. I gave them every piece of evidence a reasonable person would need. Neither email got a response. I wrote a handwritten letter. Mailed it priority from Portland. 5 days later, it came back. Returned to sender, unopened. I recognized my mother's handwriting on the envelope. I called Aunt Ruth, Dad's younger sister, the only person in our family who'd ever treated me like I mattered equally. Ruth called Dad that same evening. I know because she called me back 40 minutes later, voice heavy. "He told me to stay out of it, sweetheart. He said you've made your bed." Ruth tried to tell him about the leave of absence. Dad hung up on her. 5 days, 14 calls, 2 emails, 1 letter, 1 intermediary. All of it, every single attempt, rejected, blocked, or returned. And here's what sealed it. This wasn't new. This was the pattern of my entire life, compressed into its most brutal form. Every science fair they skipped, every recital they forgot, Every time Monica's version of events was accepted without question while mine was dismissed. This was just the final, loudest iteration. On the 6th day, I stopped calling. Not because I gave up, because I realized they had chosen a long time ago. Monica just gave them permission to stop pretending. Sarah died on a Sunday morning in December. Quiet. Just the beep of the monitor going flat and the pale winter light through the hospice window. I was the only one in the room. No one from my family called. No one knew. The one person I'd told, Monica, was too busy tending to the lie she'd planted to care that the reason for my leave of absence had just stopped breathing. I organized a small funeral. 6 people came. Sarah's former foster sister drove up from Eugene. A couple of classmates. A nurse from the oncology ward who'd grown fond of her. I stood at the front of a chapel that could hold 60 and read a eulogy to rows of empty pews. I didn't cry, not because I wasn't broken, because I'd been crying for 3 months straight and there was nothing left. That night, I sat alone in Sarah's apartment, our apartment. Her coffee mug was still on the counter, her jacket still hung by the door. I opened my laptop and stared at the application to re-enroll for the spring semester. Then I found it. Tucked inside Sarah's copy of Grey's Anatomy, our running joke, she'd bookmarked the chapter on the pancreas with a yellow sticky note that said, "Rude," was a card. Her handwriting, shaky but deliberate. "Finish what you started, Irene. Become the doctor I know you are. And don't you dare let anyone, especially your own blood, tell you who you are." She'd written it weeks before she died. She knew she wouldn't be there when I needed the push. I closed the laptop, opened it again, filled out the re-enrollment form. 2 options, crumble or climb. I chose to climb, not for my parents, not for revenge, for Sarah, and for the version of myself she believed in. I went back in January. No family support, no safety net. I picked up extra student loans, took a part-time research assistant position, and ate hospital cafeteria leftovers more times than I'll ever admit. Medical school doesn't care about your personal life. Anatomy exams don't pause because your family disowned you. 12-hour clinical rotations don't get shorter because you cried in the supply closet at 2 in the morning. So I stopped crying and started working. I worked like my life depended on it, because in a way, it did. I graduated on time. No one from Hartford came. I matched into a surgical residency at Mercy Crest Medical Center back on the East Coast, a Level 1 trauma center, one of the busiest in Connecticut. That's where I met Dr. Margaret Thornton. Maggie. 58 years old, chief of surgery emeritus, built like a steel cable wrapped in a lab coat. She became the mentor I desperately needed, and the mother figure I'd lost. 3rd year of residency, I met Nathan Caldwell. He was a civil rights attorney doing pro bono work at a community clinic near the hospital. Calm eyes, dry humor. The first person I told the full story to who didn't flinch, didn't pity me, didn't try to fix it. He just listened. Then he said, "You deserve better." 4 words. That was enough. We got married on a Saturday afternoon in Maggie's backyard. 30 guests. Nathan's father walked me down the aisle. I'd sent an invitation to Hartford. It came back the way my letter had, unopened. Aunt Ruth was there, though. She cried enough for 2 parents. After the ceremony, Maggie handed me a sealed envelope. "A nomination," she said. "Don't open it yet, you're not ready." I tucked it in my desk drawer without asking questions. 5 years passed. I became someone they wouldn't recognize. Now, I need to pause here for a second. If you've ever been in a situation where your family refused to hear your side, where the truth didn't matter because someone else's lie was louder, drop a fire in the comments. And if you think my parents are going to regret this, type karma. Let's keep going. Because what happened next, even I didn't see it coming. January, present day. I'm 32 years old. I'm the chief of trauma surgery at Mercy Crest Medical Center. I have a house in the suburbs with a porch that gets good morning light, a husband who makes me laugh every day, and a golden retriever named Hippocrates, Hippo for short, who has never once judged me for eating cereal at midnight. It's a good life, a real one, built brick by brick with my own hands. But there's a specific kind of ache that never fully fades. It lives in the hollow space between your ribs, right where a family is supposed to be. I don't wake up crying anymore. I don't check my phone hoping for a Hartford area code. But every Thanksgiving there's a moment. Just a flash, where I set the table and count the plates and feel the absence like a phantom limb. Aunt Ruth still calls every Sunday. She's my thread back to that world. I never ask about them, but I always listen when she volunteers information. Mom and Dad are healthy. Monica got divorced 2 years ago. She's selling medical devices now. The irony is not lost on me. Last week, Ruth called with something different in her voice. Cautious. Irene, there's something I need to tell you about Monica. Something concerning. Before she could finish, my hospital pager went off. Trauma activation. I told Ruth I'd call her back. I never got the chance, because what Ruth was trying to tell me was already on its way, hurtling down I-91 at 60 miles an hour in a sedan that was about to run a red light, and within the hour, the thing Ruth was warning me about would be lying on my operating table, bleeding out, with my parents in the waiting room and my name on the chart. I just didn't know it yet. Let me back up. Because what Monica did wasn't a single lie, it was a campaign. Ruth had been feeding me pieces over the years, reluctantly, carefully, like she was diffusing a bomb one wire at a time, and the picture she painted was worse than I'd imagined. For 5 years, Monica maintained the narrative. At every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, every family gathering, she performed the role of the grieving older sister. We don't really talk about Irene, she'd tell cousins. It's too painful for Mom and Dad. She'd shake her head, lower her voice, let the silence do the work. But she didn't stop at silence. She added details. She told our grandmother that I was homeless. She told Uncle Pete's wife that she'd heard from mutual friends I was in and out of rehab. She told our mother, on Christmas Eve 2 years ago, that she had tried to reach out to me and I had refused, that I was the one who cut them off. She flipped the entire story. She said at Thanksgiving, Ruth told me once, voice tight with fury, "I've begged Irene to come home. She won't even answer my calls. I think she hates us." Meanwhile, I was 3 floors deep in an operating room saving a teenager's life. The genius of it, and I use that word with disgust, was that Monica didn't need my parents to forget me. She needed them to believe I had abandoned them. That way, their grief became proof. Their silence became justified. And she remained exactly what she'd always been, the loyal daughter, the only one who stayed. She wasn't protecting them. She was protecting her position. And there was one more thing Ruth told me, something I didn't learn until much later, that made the whole picture even darker. But I'll get to that. Nathan told me this over coffee one morning, 6 months ago. He'd been sitting on it for 2 years. "There's something I didn't tell you," he said, setting his mug down carefully, the way he does when he's about to deliver bad news in his lawyer voice. 2 years ago, I got a call from HR at your old hospital. Someone using a fake name had contacted them asking about the employment status of Irene Ouellette. They wanted to know if you'd ever been disciplined, if your credentials were legitimate. I stared at him. Who? I had a colleague trace the inquiry. The IP address came back to Hartford. The kitchen went very quiet. Ipo's tail thumped against the floor. The coffee maker hissed. "She was trying to find something," I said. "Anything," Nathan confirmed. "Anything she could use to keep the story alive, to prove you were a fraud." "She didn't find anything." "No, because there's nothing to find." I wrapped my hands around my mug. Tight. I could feel the heat bleeding through the ceramic. "She didn't just lie about me once, Nathan. She's been hunting me." He reached across the table and put his hand over mine. "That's not sibling rivalry, Irene. That's something else entirely." He was right. Monica hadn't told a lie and moved on. She had built an architecture of deception, load-bearing walls, reinforced beams, and she'd spent 5 years making sure none of them cracked. Every holiday story, every whispered rumor, every fake inquiry was another brick. I could have done something then, called a lawyer, confronted my parents, blown the whole thing open. But I didn't, because life was about to do it for me, in the most brutal, public, and ironic way imaginable. And it started with a pager at 3 in the morning. Thursday night, January, 3:07 a.m. The pager dragged me out of a dead sleep. Nathan shifted beside me, murmured something. Ipo lifted his head from the foot of the bed. The screen glowed in the dark. Level 1 trauma. MVC, single female, 35, blunt abdominal trauma, hemodynamically unstable. ETA 8 minutes. I was dressed in 4 minutes. Driving in 6. The roads were empty and wet, that particular shade of black that January gives you in Connecticut. I ran through the case in my head the way I always do. Mechanism of injury, probable organ involvement, surgical options, motor vehicle collision, blunt abdominal trauma, unstable vitals, likely splenic rupture, possible liver laceration. I'd done this surgery 100 times. I badged in through the ambulance bay entrance and walked straight to the trauma bay. My team was already assembling. 2 residents, a trauma nurse, anesthesia on standby. I picked up the intake iPad from the charge nurse's station and swiped to the incoming patient chart. Patient, Monica D. Ouellette, DOB, March 14, 1990. Emergency contact, Gerald Ouellette, father. I stopped walking. The hallway noise, the beeping, the intercom, the squeak of shoes on linoleum, it all pulled back like a tide. For 2 seconds, maybe 3, I wasn't a surgeon. I was a 26-year-old sitting on a hospital floor in Portland, phone still warm in my hand, listening to a dial tone. Dr. Ouellette? My charge nurse, Linda, appeared at my shoulder. You okay? I looked up, blinked, set the iPad down. I'm fine. Prep Bay 2, and page Dr. Patel. I want him on standby. The ambulance siren wailed in the distance, getting closer, and behind that ambulance, I knew, before I could see them, were 2 people I hadn't faced in 5 years. The ambulance doors cracked open and the stretcher came fast. Monica was strapped down, unconscious, oxygen mask fogging with shallow breaths, blood on her shirt, one hand hanging limp off the side rail. The paramedics rattled off numbers, blood pressure dropping, heart rate climbing, 2 large-bore IVs running wide. Behind them, running, came my parents. My mother looked like she'd aged a decade, hair thinner, face drawn. She was in a bathrobe, slippers on the wrong feet. My father was in a flannel and jeans, thrown on in a panic. His face was the color of old paper. "That's my daughter," he shouted past the triage nurse. "Where are they taking her? I need to talk to the doctor in charge." The nurse, a woman named Carla I'd worked with for 3 years, put both hands up. "Sir, family needs to wait in the surgical waiting area. The trauma team is already here. The chief is handling this personally." "The chief?" Dad grabbed Carla's arm. "Get me the chief, now!" Carla glanced through the glass partition toward the trauma bay. She looked at me, gowned, gloved, my badge hanging from my scrub top. She read the name, read it again. Her eyes went wide for just a fraction of a second. I gave a small shake of my head. "Not now." Carla composed herself. "Sir, the chief is prepping for surgery. You'll be updated as soon as possible. Please, the waiting room is this way." My parents were led down the hall. Mom was whispering prayers, hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. Dad kept turning back, looking through every window he passed. "She's all we have," he said to no one in particular. "Please, she's all we have." I heard it through the partition glass. Every word. She's all we have. As if I had never existed. I stepped into the scrub room alone. 30 seconds. That's all I allowed myself. I turned on the faucet, let the water run hot over my hands, looked at myself in the stainless steel mirror above the sink. Distorted, warped. The way everything felt right now, scrub cap on, badge visible. The face of a woman who had been surgically removed from her own family tree, now being asked to surgically save the woman who held the saw. Part of me wanted to walk out, call Patel, let someone else carry this. Let my parents owe their daughter's life to a stranger, not to me. That would be cleaner, simpler. But there was a woman on that table with a ruptured spleen and what looked like a grade 3 liver laceration. She was losing blood faster than we could replace it. She was going to die in the next 30 to 40 minutes if the best surgeon in this building didn't operate, and the best surgeon in this building was me. I paged Patel directly. "I have a conflict of interest. The patient is a family member. I'm disclosing it now and documenting in the chart. If at any point my judgment is compromised, you take the lead, no questions asked. Patel's voice was steady. Understood, Chief. I told Linda to note the disclosure in the nursing record. Everything by the book, everything on paper. Then I pulled on fresh gloves, pushed through the OR doors, and looked down at the table. My sister's face. Still. Bruised. The oxygen mask fogging and clearing. She looked smaller than I remembered. Thinner. There were worry lines around her eyes that hadn't been there 5 years ago. For 3 seconds, she wasn't the woman who destroyed my life. She was a body on my table, and that was exactly how I needed her to be. Let's go, scalpel. 3 hours and 40 minutes. That's how long it took to rebuild what the steering column and the red light had torn apart. Ruptured spleen. We took it out. Grade 3 liver laceration. We repaired it with precision sutures, layer by painstaking layer. Internal bleeding from 2 separate mesenteric vessels. Clamped, cauterized, controlled. I didn't speak unless I needed to. Suction, clamp, lap pad, retract. My hands moved the way they've been trained to move. Steady, deliberate, fast when speed mattered and slow when precision mattered more. The residents watched. They always watched during my cases, and I could feel their attention sharpen when the liver repair got tricky. I didn't falter. I couldn't afford to. At 6:48 a.m., I placed the final closing stitch. Monica's vitals were stable. BP normalized. Output clear. She was alive. Dr. Patel, who'd been standing silently in the corner the entire time, pulled his mask down. Irene, he said quietly. That was flawless. You want me to talk to the family? I peeled off my gloves, dropped them in the bin, washed my hands. Automatic, methodical, the same way I'd done it 10,000 times before. No, I said. This one's mine. I caught my reflection again in the scrub room mirror. Same face, same badge. But something had shifted. For 5 years, I'd been the daughter who disappeared. Now I was the surgeon who'd just pulled her sister back from the edge of death. Those two facts were about to collide in a waiting room 40 feet away, in front of my entire night shift team. I straightened my scrub top, checked my badge, took one breath. Then I walked toward the waiting room. The hallway had never felt so long. The waiting room had that fluorescent hush that hospitals get at 7 in the morning. 2 other families were scattered in the far corners. A television murmured weather reports to no one. And in the center row, sitting rigid, sleepless, terrified, were my parents. I pushed through the double doors, still in my surgical scrubs, mask pulled down around my neck. Scrub cap off now, hair pulled back. My badge hung at chest level, printed in clean block letters anyone could read from 6 feet away. Dr. Irene Ouellette, MD, FACS, Chief of Trauma Surgery. Dad stood first. He always stood first. It was a reflex, the need to be in charge. Doctor, how is she? Is Monica... He stopped. His eyes had dropped to my badge, then rose to my face, then dropped to the badge again. I watched the recognition move through him like something physical, a tremor that started in his hands and climbed to his jaw. Mom looked up a half-second later. Her lips parted. No sound came out. Her right hand shot to Dad's forearm and clamped down, fingers digging into the flannel of his sleeve with a force that I would later learn left 4 bruises shaped like fingertips. 5 seconds of silence. 5 seconds that held 5 years. I spoke first. Calm, clinical. The same voice I used to address every family in this room. Mr. and Mrs. Ouellette. I'm Dr. Ouellette, Chief of Trauma Surgery. Your daughter Monica sustained a ruptured spleen and a grade 3 liver laceration in the accident. Surgery was successful. She's stable and currently in the ICU. You'll be able to see her in approximately 1 hour. Mr. and Mrs. Not Mom and Dad. I watched that land. I watched it cut. Behind me, through the glass partition, Linda and 2 nurses were watching. They knew. By the look on their faces, they'd already put it together. My mother moved first. She took a step toward me, arms lifting, a sob already breaking through her chest. Irene? Oh my God. Oh my God. Irene. I stepped back. Half a step. Polite. Unmistakable. She froze. Her hands hung in the air between us. Then slowly, painfully, dropped to her sides. Dad's voice came out like gravel dragged over concrete. You're a doctor. I am. You're the chief. I am. But Monica said what exactly? He closed his mouth, opened it, closed it again. I could see the machinery of his mind trying to reassemble 5 years of certainty that was crumbling in real time. Mom was crying now. Not quietly. "We thought you dropped out. She told you I dropped out. That I had a boyfriend with a drug problem. That I was homeless. That I refused to contact you." I kept my voice level. No shaking. No tears. I had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times in the shower, in the car, in the dark before sleep. I never thought it would happen in surgical scrubs under fluorescent lights. None of it was true. Not a single word. Through the glass behind me, I could see Carla press a hand to her mouth. A resident, Dr. Kimura, second year, looked away, jaw tight. Linda set down her clipboard and stared. Dad tried to redirect. Old instinct. "This isn't the time or place, Irene. Your sister is in the ICU." "I know. I just spent 3 hours and 40 minutes making sure she survives. So yes, Dad. I'm aware of where she is." He had nothing. For the first time in my life, my father, a man who had never been at a loss for a decree, had absolutely nothing. The silence was doing the work I never could. 5 years of blocked calls, returned letters, ignored emails, none of it had made a dent. But standing here, alive and accomplished and wearing the proof on my chest, that was louder than anything I could have written in a letter. Mom reached for the back of a chair to steady herself. "The letters," she whispered. "You said you sent letters." 2 emails with my leave of absence paperwork attached. 1 handwritten letter, mailed priority. "You sent it back unopened. I recognized your handwriting on the envelope." She pressed her fist against her mouth. Dad stared at the floor. "I called 14 times in 5 days. I asked Aunt Ruth to talk to you. You told her to stay out of it." I wasn't accusing. I was reciting. These were facts, and facts don't need volume. Then Linda appeared at the door. She didn't know the full story, not yet, but she had hospital business. "Dr. Ouellette, I'm sorry to interrupt." The board chair saw the overnight trauma log. He asked me to pass along. "The Physician of the Year Selection Committee sends their congratulations on tonight's surgical outcome." Linda said it the way she'd say anything routine. She had no idea she'd just detonated a second bomb. Mom looked at me, eyes swollen, mascara gone, bathrobe still on. "Physician of the Year? It's an internal recognition, it's nothing." I turned to Linda. "Thank you. I need to check post-op vitals. Excuse me." I walked toward the ICU corridor, measured steps, spine straight. I didn't look back, but I heard my mother's voice behind me, small and ruined. "Jerry, what have we done?" And I heard something I'd never heard before. My father, saying nothing. Because silence, for the first time, was the only honest thing he had left. 4 hours later, ICU, room 6, monitor beeping in rhythm, morning light angling through the blinds. I walked in for the standard post-op assessment. Vitals, drainage output, wound check, routine. Except nothing about this was routine. Monica's eyes were open, glassy, unfocused from the anesthesia, but open. She blinked at the ceiling, blinked at the IV pole. Then her gaze tracked sideways to me. She squinted. Read my badge. Read it again. The color drained from her face in a way I've seen before, but only in patients who've just been told their prognosis is bad. "Irene." Her voice was sandpaper. "Good morning, Monica. I'm your attending surgeon. You sustained a ruptured spleen and a grade 3 liver laceration from the accident. Surgery went well. You're going to make a full recovery. You're a doctor. Not a question. A reckoning. I'm the chief of this department, have been for 2 years. I watched it happen. The same spectrum Dad had gone through, but slower, because Monica was processing it through a morphine drip and what I suspect was dawning terror. Confusion first, then disbelief, then fear. And then, there it was, the expression I'd seen my whole life, the quick flicker behind the eyes, calculation. Even now, lying in a hospital bed with my sutures holding her liver together, Monica was trying to figure out how to spin this. "Irene, listen, I can explain. You don't need to explain anything to me." I nodded toward the glass door, where 2 figures stood in the hallway, watching, faces wrecked, eyes red. "You need to explain it to them." I updated her chart, checked the drain, left without another word. I didn't stay to hear what happened next, but the entire ICU floor heard it. Monica's room wasn't soundproof, and neither was the truth. Okay, I have to stop here for a second. What do you think Monica told my parents when they walked into that ICU room? Option A. She finally tells the truth. Option B. She doubles down on the lie. Option C. She plays the victim, again. Drop your answer in the comments. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now is the time. Because the next part of this story is where everything comes crashing down. I learned what happened from Linda, who heard it from the ICU nurse, who heard it through the glass. If you guessed option C, congratulations. You know my sister. The moment my parents walked in, Monica started crying. Big, heaving sobs that pulled at her stitches and made the heart monitor spike. Mom, Dad, you have to believe me. I never meant for it to go this far. I was scared for her. Dad stood at the foot of the bed. His voice was barely controlled. Monica, Irene is a surgeon. She's the chief of trauma surgery at this hospital. I didn't know that. She said she sent letters, emails. She called 14 times. She asked Ruth to intervene. Mom's voice was flat, hollow. Is that true? She's exaggerating. You know how Ruth tried to tell us. Dad again, and this time his voice cracked. Not from sadness, but from the structural failure of everything he'd believed for 5 years. 2 years ago, Ruth called and said Irene was in residency. A surgeon. You told us Ruth was lying, that she was just trying to cause drama. Ruth doesn't know the whole story. What is the full story, Monica? Mom, screaming. In an ICU, the nurse at the station outside flinched. 2 rooms down, a patient's visitor looked up from their phone. And Monica, backed into a corner, IVs in both arms, my sutures in her abdomen, did what she always does. She pivoted from defense to offense. Fine, she's a doctor. Good for her. But she abandoned this family. She never called. Because we blocked her number, Monica. Dad's hand was on the bed rail, knuckles white. Because you told us to. The heart monitor beeped. The IV dripped. And Monica, for perhaps the first time in her adult life, had no script. Aunt Ruth walked into the ICU at 9:45 that morning. I'd called her from the scrub room after surgery, not to summon her as a weapon, but because Monica was her niece, too, and Ruth deserved to know. But Ruth came prepared. 5 years of silence will do that to a woman with a filing system and a long memory. She didn't sit down, didn't hug anyone. She stood in the middle of that room and said, I've been waiting 5 years to have this conversation, and I'm not waiting 1 more minute. She pulled out her phone, opened a folder she'd labeled, I found out later, Irene, proof. Inside, screenshots of every email I'd sent my parents in those first desperate days. The PDF of my leave of absence from OHSU, signed by the dean, stamped with the registrar's seal. My re-enrollment confirmation. A photo of my residency graduation, me in a cap, holding the diploma. Aunt Ruth next to me, the only family member in the frame. She held the phone out. Mom took it with trembling hands. And here, Ruth said, swiping to a text thread. This is from Monica, sent to me 4 years ago. She read it aloud. Don't tell Mom and Dad about Irene's residency. It'll just confuse them. They're finally at peace. The room went still. Monica stared at the ceiling. Her jaw was set, but the calculation was gone from her eyes. What replaced it was something I'd never seen there before, the look of someone who's run out of rooms to hide in. You told me to keep quiet for the family's sake, Ruth said, looking straight at Monica. But this family hasn't had peace. It's had a 5-year blackout. Ruth turned to my parents. And you two, you let this happen, not because you didn't love Irene, but because loving Monica was easier. Nobody argued. There was nothing left to argue with. Mom sank into the chair beside Monica's bed, but she wasn't looking at Monica anymore. She was scrolling through Ruth's phone, reading my emails one by one. Her lips moved as she read. She stopped on the last one, the one I'd sent the night before my residency graduation. I know what it says. I've reread it 100 times in my own sent folder. Mom, I don't know if you'll read this. I graduated from residency today. I wish you were here. I'm still your daughter. I never stopped being your daughter. Mom doubled over in the chair. Not crying. It was beyond that. It was the sound of someone meeting the full weight of a mistake they can never undo. Dad stood at the window, his back to the room, his shoulders shaking. Aunt Ruth told me later it was the first time she had ever seen her older brother cry. In 62 years, not once. Not at their mother's funeral. Not when his business nearly went under. Not ever. He cried now. Silently, facing the parking lot, while the monitor beeped behind him. Monica lay in the bed. She'd stopped talking. The IV dripped. Her eyes were fixed on a point on the ceiling. There was nothing left to perform, no audience that would believe her. The persona she'd worn for 35 years was lying in pieces on the linoleum, and no amount of charm or tears or clever reframing was going to put it back together. You missed her wedding, Jerry. Ruth's voice was quiet now, spent. Nathan's father walked her down the aisle. Do you understand what that means? Dad didn't turn from the window, but he spoke. 4 words, low, cracked down the center. What have we done? Not a question. He wasn't asking. He was convicting. And knowing the truth and knowing what to do with it, those are 2 very different things. I came back that afternoon. End of my shift. 22 hours since the pager woke me. But who's counting? My parents were still there. Of course they were. Where else would they go? Back to the house where they'd spent 5 years pretending they only had one daughter? Mom stood up the second I walked in. Her face was swollen, eyes nearly shut from crying. Irene, baby, I'm so sorry. I held up my hand, gently, but firm. I hear you, and I believe you're sorry, but sorry is a word. It's a starting place, not a finish line. What I need is time. Dad turned from the window. He looked like he'd aged 5 years since this morning. We want to make this right. Then you need to understand something. I kept my voice even. This wasn't anger. This was clarity. The kind that only comes after you've burned through every other emotion, and what's left is the truth, clean and simple. I'm not the girl you sent away. I'm not the girl who begged you to listen for 5 days from 3,000 miles away. I'm someone who built a life, a whole life, without you. And if you want to be part of it now, it will be on my terms, not Monica's, not yours, mine. Dad opened his mouth. Old reflex. Then he closed it. And nodded. A small, devastated nod. I looked at Monica on the bed. Her eyes were open, watching me. When you're recovered, I said, you and I are going to have a conversation, a real one, but not today. Today, you're my patient. I don't mix the two. I left. Spine straight, steps measured. I didn't turn around. I'm not closing the door, but I'm the one who decides when it opens, how wide, and who walks through. 2 weeks later. Monica was discharged. Her incision was healing, the rest of her, not so much. I chose the location, a coffee shop in Middletown, halfway between her apartment and my house. Neutral ground. Nathan came but sat at a separate table near the window, pretending to read briefs. He wasn't pretending. Monica walked in looking like someone who'd been hollowed out. She'd lost weight. Surgery plus not eating will do that. And the confidence she usually wore like cologne was gone. For the first time in my memory, my older sister looked exactly her age. She sat down, wrapped her hands around a cup she didn't drink from, stared at the table. I didn't do preamble. I'm not going to yell at you. I'm not going to list every lie. You know what you did. What I want to know is why. Silence. Long enough that the barista called someone's name and it echoed off the walls. Then quiet. Because you were going to be everything I wasn't. And I couldn't handle it. I let that sit. That's honest. First honest thing you've said to me in 10 years. I'm sorry, Irene. I know you are. But sorry doesn't give me back the years. Sorry doesn't put Dad at my wedding. Sorry doesn't unsend that box Mom shipped back to me. My high school graduation things. Returned like I was dead to her. She looked away. Her eyes were wet. Real tears. I know the difference now. Then she said something I wasn't expecting. I also called your medical school. Twice. I tried to get them to revoke your leave of absence. I told them you'd fabricated the caregiver documents. The coffee shop hummed around us. I stared at her. Your dean wouldn't listen to me. He protected you. He didn't protect me, Monica. He believed the truth. That's not the same thing. I leaned back in my chair, took a breath. This was the part I'd mapped out the night before, sitting on the kitchen floor with Hippo's head in my lap while Nathan reviewed it with me like a closing argument. I'm not cutting you out of my life, I said, but I'm setting conditions. Monica nodded, small, defeated. You will tell the truth, the full truth, to every family member you lied to, every aunt, every uncle, every cousin who spent 5 years thinking I was in rehab or living on the street. You will correct every single story. I will. And you'll do it in writing. An email to the family group, all 47 people. Ruth will confirm everyone receives it. Another nod. I met with my parents separately the following week. Nathan drove me. We sat at their kitchen table, the same table where Dad had read my acceptance letter all those years ago. The same table where Monica had smiled with just her mouth. I'm open to rebuilding, I said. But I need you to go to family counseling, both of you. Not for me, for yourselves. You need to understand why you believed a lie about your own daughter and never once picked up the phone to check. Dad's jaw tightened. We don't do that in this family. That's exactly why we're here, Dad. Mom put her hand on his arm, gently. Jerry, please. He looked at her. Looked at me. Something behind his eyes cracked. Not open, not yet, but cracked. Fine. I stood to leave, then turned back. One more thing. Nathan's father walked me down the aisle. That happened. We can't undo it. But if you want to know your future grandchildren, you start now. Not with grand gestures, with consistency. Apologies expire, boundaries don't. That's the difference between sentiment and structure. 1 month later, the Physician of the Year Gala, 200 people in the ballroom of the Hartford Marquis Hotel, surgeons, department heads, hospital administrators, donors, board members, crystal glasses clinking, name tags on lanyards, a string quartet playing something classical that nobody was listening to. I wore a simple black dress. Nathan was at a front table, looking like he'd been born in a suit. Maggie Thornton sat beside him, arms crossed, the faintest smile on her face, the one she reserves for moments she's been engineering for years. The MC stepped to the podium. This year's Physician of the Year, a surgeon whose clinical excellence, composure under pressure, and commitment to her patients have set a new standard for this institution. Dr. Irene Ouellette, Chief of Trauma Surgery. Applause, standing ovation from the surgical staff who'd seen me work. I walked to the stage, spotlight warm, podium solid under my hands. I kept it short. 5 years ago, I almost quit. Not because I couldn't do the work, but because I lost the people I thought I needed to keep going. What I learned is that the people you need aren't always the ones you're born to. Sometimes they're the ones who choose you. I looked at Maggie, at Nathan, at my team in the 3rd row. Then I looked at the back of the ballroom, last row. 2 seats Ruth had quietly arranged. My parents, Mom in a navy dress she'd probably bought that week, Dad in a tie he clearly hated, both sitting with their hands in their laps, looking up at the stage with expressions I can only describe as grief and pride waging war on the same face. And sometimes, I said, the ones you're born to find their way back, late, but here. Mom covered her mouth. Dad stood. Applause filled the rest. After the gala, Dad found Nathan near the coat check. He stood in front of my husband for a long moment. I owe you an apology. I should have been the one. Nathan, gracious to his core, extended his hand. With all due respect, sir, you should have been a lot of things, but we're here now. They shook hands. Dad's eyes were red. He didn't let go right away. Monica sent the email on a Wednesday night. Ruth confirmed delivery to all 47 addresses. I didn't read it until the next morning. Nathan brought me coffee and set the laptop on the kitchen table without a word. He knows when to give me space. It was 3 paragraphs. No excuses, no flowery language, just the facts laid bare. She had lied about my leaving medical school. She had fabricated evidence. She had maintained the deception for 5 years. She had deliberately prevented our parents from learning the truth. She ended with, "Irene never abandoned this family. I made sure they believed she did. That is entirely on me." The responses came in waves. Uncle Pete's wife called Ruth in tears. She'd repeated Monica's rehab story at a book club 2 years ago. Cousin David in Vermont sent Monica a one-line reply, "I don't know who you are anymore." Our grandmother, Nana June, 89, the matriarch who'd stopped asking about me at Thanksgiving because Monica told her it was too painful, called me directly. "I'm 89 years old," she said, her voice paper-thin but furious. "And I have never been lied to so thoroughly by my own blood. Irene, forgive an old woman for not seeing it." "There's nothing to forgive, Nana. You were lied to. We all were." Nobody organized a boycott of Monica. Nobody sent group texts declaring her dead to them, but the trust she'd stockpiled, the currency she'd been spending for 35 years, was gone. You could feel it in the silence after her email, in the replies that didn't come, in the invitations that quietly stopped arriving. No one punished Monica. They just stopped believing her. And for someone who'd built her entire identity on being believed, that was punishment enough. My parents started counseling in February. A therapist in West Hartford named Dr. Renna, calm, direct, the kind of woman who doesn't let you dodge a question. Mom took to it immediately. She'd been carrying the weight of her passivity like a stone in her coat pocket, and the first time Dr. Renna named it, enabling through silence, Mom broke down in the office and didn't stop crying for 40 minutes. That's what Ruth told me. I wasn't there. It wasn't my session to witness. Dad struggled. He went. He sat in the chair. He answered questions in as few words as possible. Dr. Renna told him, Ruth relayed, that his need to be right, his refusal to revisit a decision once it was made, had been the load-bearing wall of this entire disaster. Monica provided the lie, but Dad's pride cemented it into place. He didn't argue with her. That might have been the first sign of change. 3 weeks into counseling, Mom mailed me a letter, handwritten. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. "I failed you," she wrote. "Not just when I believed Monica, but every time I chose peace over fairness. Every time I let your father's temper decide what was true. Every time I saw you standing in the doorway, quiet and waiting, and told myself you were fine, because it was easier than admitting I wasn't brave enough to fight for you." I read it at the kitchen table. Ipo was asleep on my feet. Nathan was in the next room, pretending not to listen. I didn't cry, but I held that letter for a long time. Then I opened the drawer where I keep things that matter. Sarah's card, my returned letters, the wedding invitation that came back unopened, and I placed it inside. Same drawer, different side. Progress isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's just rearranging what you carry. Monica started therapy too, her own. Separate from the family sessions. I know this because Ruth told me, and because Monica mentioned it, briefly, awkwardly, the second time we met for coffee. We've had 3 of these meetings now. Each one short, each one stiff, each one slightly more honest than the last. The first time, she stared at her hands and said nothing useful. The second time, she told me about the therapy. The third time, she said something that actually landed. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even know if I deserve it. But I want you to know, I'm trying not to be that person anymore." I took a sip of my coffee, set it down. "Then show me." Words are cheap in this family. They always have been. "Show me with time." She nodded. Didn't push, didn't perform. That was new. Do I believe her? Honestly, I don't know. I've spent a lifetime reading Monica's performances, and I'm still not sure where her acting ends and her actual self begins. Maybe she's not sure either. Maybe that's what the therapy is for. But I believe in the possibility of change. That's all I can offer right now. She carries my surgical scar on her body. 7 inches. Left upper abdomen, fading from red to white over the coming year. Every time she gets dressed, every time she catches her reflection, she'll see the mark left by the sister she tried to erase. The sister who, when it mattered most, held a scalpel with steady hands and chose the oath over the anger. I carry her damage in my memory. 5 years of silence, lodged somewhere between my ribs. We're even. In the strangest, most painful way two sisters can be even. And maybe, with enough time, enough real, unglamorous, consistent time, we'll find our way to something that isn't even. Something better. Something new. I'm sitting in my office at Mercy Crest. It's late. The hallway outside is quiet. That particular stillness hospitals have after the last visitors leave and before the night shift energy kicks in. My nameplate is on the door. My diplomas are on the wall. Not because I need to see them, but because the residents do. On my desk, a framed wedding photo. Nathan, Maggie, Aunt Ruth, 30 guests, a backyard in October light. No parents in the frame, but on the bookshelf next to it, a new photo. Taken 3 weeks ago. Mom and Dad, standing on my front porch, coats on, looking slightly lost. Dad's hands are in his pockets. Mom is mid-smile, trying too hard but trying. It's awkward. It's imperfect. It's real. If you're watching this and you see yourself in my story, whether you're the one who was silenced or the one who did the silencing, I want to tell you something. The truth doesn't expire. It doesn't matter if it takes 5 days or 5 years. The truth has a patient way of showing up exactly when it's needed most. You can't rush it, but you can't outrun it either. I didn't get revenge on my sister. I didn't need revenge. I became someone who didn't need it. And that turned out to be the most devastating response of all. Not a scheme, not a plan. Just a life, lived fully, on my own terms. And if you're waiting for your family to see you, really see you, stop waiting. See yourself first. Build the life you deserve with the people who show up. And when the others finally turn around, let them find a door that you control. You decide when it opens. You decide how wide. You decide who walks through. That's not revenge. That's architecture. Sunday morning, first week of February. Light snow falling outside the kitchen window, the kind that doesn't stick but makes everything look like it's being gently forgiven. I'm making French toast. Nathan is grinding coffee beans, singing off-key to something on the radio. Ipo is stationed under the table, optimistic about crumbs. The doorbell rings. I wipe my hands on a towel and open the front door. Mom and Dad, standing on the porch in their winter coats. Dad is holding a bottle of orange juice like he's not sure what to do with his hands. Mom has a tin of homemade cookies. Her shortbread, the ones she used to make for every school event of Monica's, and none of mine. "Hi," Mom says, nervous, hopeful. "Come in," I say. "Coffee's almost ready." Dad steps inside, looks around the kitchen like he's cataloging everything, the house he's never been in, the life he almost never knew existed. He clears his throat. "Can I help with anything?" I look at him. My father, 62 years old, standing in my kitchen for the first time, asking permission to be useful. "You can set the table, Dad." He nods, goes to the cabinet I point to, takes out plates, counts them, looks at me. 4? 4. He sets them down, one by one, carefully, like they might break if he's not gentle. Nathan hands him coffee. Mom hugs me at the stove, not a dramatic movie hug, just a quiet one, arms around me, forehead against my shoulder. No words, holding on. Ipo thumps his tail. Snow falls outside. The French toast sizzles. It's not perfect. It's not the childhood I deserved, or the reconciliation movies promise. But it's real. And real is more than I had for a very long time. My name is Dr. Irene Ouellette. I'm 32 years old, and I am finally, slowly, carefully, letting myself be someone's daughter again. 4 plates. It's a start. If this story resonated with you, if it made you think about your own family, your own boundaries, or someone you've lost and found, leave me a comment. Tell me, what would you have done? Would you have opened that door? And if you want more stories like this, check the description for one I think you'll love just as much. Thank you for being here. I'll see you next time. My name is Fiona Mercer. I'm 34, an ER nurse, and a single mom. Last Christmas Eve, while I was chest-deep in a cardiac arrest at Riverside Community Hospital, my in-laws made my 10-year-old daughter stand in a corner of their dining room for 6 hours, hungry, shaking, with a handwritten cardboard sign hung around her neck that read, "Family Disgrace." Her crime? Telling the truth at the dinner table. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I drove home, put my daughter to bed, and opened a box I hadn't touched in 3 years. My late husband's files. What I found inside changed everything. 48 hours later, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing, not with apologies, with panic. Before I go on, if this story speaks to you, take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely want to hear what happened next. And while you're here, drop a comment. Where are you listening from right now, and what time is it there? Now let me take you back to December 24th, the night the lights on our little Christmas tree were still blinking when I got the call from the hospital. I had set the table for two. That was something I'd started doing after Ryan died, making our little traditions feel intentional instead of lonely. Paper crackers from the dollar store, cranberry candles Lily picked out herself, a lasagna cooling on the counter because Lily once said turkey was boring, and I'd never argued with that logic. The tree was 5 feet tall, pre-lit, slightly crooked. Lily had wrapped every branch in silver tinsel until it looked like a disco ball having an identity crisis. I loved it. We were 15 minutes from sitting down when my phone rang. The caller ID said Riverside ER, and my stomach dropped before I even answered. Fiona, it's Tanya. Greg collapsed at home, loss of consciousness. They're bringing him in now. We're down to 2 nurses tonight. I need you. Greg was our charge nurse. Tanya wouldn't call on Christmas Eve unless it was real. I stood in my kitchen, staring at the lasagna, holding the phone so tight my knuckles ached. Lily was in her room, putting on the red velvet dress I'd hand-stitched the hem on because the store version was 2 inches too long. She'd made a gift box for her grandmother, painted it herself, gold and green, with a card that said, "To Grandma Judith, Merry Christmas, love Lily," in her careful 5th-grade cursive. There was no one else to call. My parents lived in Oregon. Grace was already working the floor. The only option within 10 minutes of our house was Judith's annual Christmas dinner, 20 relatives, a honey-glazed ham, and the kind of warmth that always had conditions attached. I dialed Judith's number. She picked up on the first ring. "Fiona, how lovely. Of course bring Lily over. We'd love to have her." Her voice was bright, brighter than usual. That should have been my first warning. I knelt in front of Lily, straightened the collar on her red dress, and handed her the gift box. "Grandma Judith's going to take care of you tonight, okay? Me has to go save someone at work." Lily hugged me at the door. Her breath came out in a white cloud, 28 degrees and dropping. "Come back before midnight, Mom. I promise." I didn't keep that promise. The ER on Christmas Eve is a specific kind of chaos. It smells like antiseptic and cinnamon. Someone always brings cookies and they sit on the nurse's station getting stale while we run. That night we had a 3-car pileup on Route 17, a toddler with a febrile seizure, 2 alcohol poisonings, and Greg's empty chair reminding us we were short-handed. I moved on autopilot. Start the IV. Check the monitor. Update the chart. Next patient. My hands knew what to do, even when my mind kept drifting 10 minutes south to Judith's house, where my daughter was sitting at a table full of people who shared her last name, but had never once asked how she was doing in school. At 10:17 p.m., I finally got a 90-second break. I pulled out my phone behind the supply cart. 3 missed calls from Lily. 1 text, sent at 9:43 p.m. "Mom, please come get me." No context, no emojis. Lily always used emojis. My thumb was already on the callback when the phone connected, but it wasn't Lily's voice on the other end. "Fiona, it's Judith." Calm, measured, the voice she used at church fundraisers. "Lily's fine. She's just being a little dramatic. She's playing with the cousins now. Focus on your shift, honey." I heard nothing in the background. No kids laughing, no music, just the low hum of a dishwasher. "Can I talk to her?" "She's in the other room. I'll have her call you later." She hung up before I could push. I stared at the phone. Then Tanya called a code blue in Bay 4, and I ran. It wasn't until 12:40 a.m., changing out of my scrubs in the locker room, that I scrolled back to Lily's text and noticed the photo she'd attached. I'd missed it during the chaos. It was dark, blurry, taken from a low angle, like she'd held the phone against her lap and tapped blindly. I could make out a corner of a room, the edge of a dining chair, and on Lily's chest, the bottom of something rectangular. Cardboard, maybe. with black writing I couldn't quite read. I zoomed in. My fingers went cold. I could only make out 2 words: family and disgrace. I was in my car in under 3 minutes. The porch light at Judith's house was off. Every other house on Maple Ridge Lane had their Christmas lights blazing, but 414 was dark, like the party had packed up and pretended it never happened. I knocked. Then I knocked harder. Judith opened the door in her silk bathrobe, reading glasses pushed up on her head, as if she'd been settling in for the night, like it was perfectly normal for my 10-year-old to still be here at 1:20 in the morning. Fiona, goodness, you could have waited until... I stepped past her. The living room smelled like cinnamon and dish soap. The long dining table had been cleared, chairs pushed in neat. The only thing out of place was my daughter, sitting on the love seat in the far corner of the room, her red velvet dress wrinkled, her eyes swollen, and her hands resting on a piece of cardboard in her lap, like she'd forgotten it was there. The sign was roughly 12 by 18 inches, cut from a shipping box, written in thick black Sharpie, the same looping cursive Judith used on her Christmas cards every year. I would know that handwriting anywhere. Family disgrace. Lily looked up at me and didn't say a word. She didn't need to. Her eyes said everything. Hours of everything. I crossed the room, knelt in front of her, and gently lifted the sign off her chest. The yarn they'd used to hang it around her neck had left a red line on her skin. I folded the sign once, twice, slipped it into my coat pocket. Then I looked at Judith. She stood in the doorway of her own living room with her arms folded, chin raised, waiting for me to yell. I didn't yell. I picked up my daughter, carried her to the car, and buckled her in. I closed the door quietly. I walked around to the driver's side, started the engine, and pulled away from 414 Maple Ridge Lane without saying a single word to Judith Mercer. Not because I had nothing to say, because what I had to say, I would say with paperwork. Lily didn't speak for the first 4 minutes of the drive. I didn't push. I turned the heat up to 78 and pointed the vents toward her side. Her hands were like ice when I'd lifted her. Then, somewhere between the gas station and our street, she started talking. Quiet, flat. The way children speak when they've been told their feelings don't count. I said something at dinner, Mom, about Uncle Derek. What did you say? I heard him on the phone last week, at Grandma's house when I was in the hallway. He was talking about taking money from my college thing, the one Grandpa set up. He said he needed it for something. I didn't understand all of it. She paused, pulled at a thread on her dress. At dinner, Aunt Karen was talking about how Uncle Derek just bought new stuff for his truck, and I said, "Is that from my college money?" I didn't mean to be bad. I just asked. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles cracked. Then what happened? Everyone got really quiet. Uncle Derek said I was making things up. Grandma Judith said I was a liar, and I needed to learn what happens to liars in the Mercer family. She got the cardboard from the garage and wrote on it. She made me wear it. She told everyone not to give me food until I apologized for lying. Did anyone say anything? Anyone at all? Aunt Karen laughed. The cousins went to the other room. Nobody said anything, Mom. I pulled the car over on Birchwood Drive, 3 blocks from our house. I unbuckled, leaned across, and wrapped my arms around my daughter. She was trembling. Not crying. Just trembling, like her body had used up all its tears hours ago. Lily, you are not a liar. You told the truth, and I am so proud of you. Mom, am I a bad person? No, baby. You are the bravest person I know. She fell asleep against my shoulder before I pulled into our driveway. I carried her inside, made her a peanut butter sandwich, sat on the edge of her bed while she ate it in half-conscious bites, and read 2 chapters of The One and Only Ivan until her breathing slowed. Then I closed her door, walked to the kitchen, and did something I hadn't done in 3 years. I looked at the box on the top shelf of the hall closet, the one labeled Ryan, Documents. The one I'd shoved up there the week after the funeral and never opened because every time I saw his handwriting I couldn't breathe. I pulled it down. But first, coffee. Because what I was about to do required a very clear head. The box was a standard banker's box, white cardboard, Ryan's handwriting, and blue ballpoint on the side. Inside, life insurance paperwork I'd already dealt with, our marriage certificate, Lily's birth certificate, a bundle of photos from our honeymoon in Shenandoah, and at the very bottom, a manila envelope sealed with clear packing tape. The envelope was heavier than I expected. I slid it open with a kitchen knife. Inside were 3 documents. The first was a certified copy of a quitclaim deed, dated April 14th, 4 months before Ryan's accident. It transferred full ownership of the property at 26 Birchwood Drive. Our house, the land, everything, from Ryan Mercer to Fiona Mercer, signed by Ryan, notarized, stamped by the clerk of the Circuit Court for Henley County, Virginia. The second was a printout from the county recorder's website confirming the deed had been filed and recorded. Official, legal, done. The third was a handwritten note on yellow legal paper, folded twice. Fiona, this house is yours and Lily's. I took care of it. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. R. I read it 3 times. The handwriting blurred the 3rd time because my hands were shaking. Not from sadness, from something harder to name. Something between fury and relief, and the aching wish that he could have told me in person. For 3 years, I had lived in this house believing it sat on Mercer family land, that Judith could revoke our right to be here with a single phone call. That belief had kept me quiet through every passive-aggressive remark, every cold shoulder at family dinners, every time Judith reminded me that this property has been in the Mercer family for 2 generations. It was in the Mercer family. It was in my name. I opened my laptop, navigated to the Henley County Property Records portal, and typed in our address. The screen loaded. Owner of record, Fiona A. Mercer. I closed the laptop, picked up Ryan's note, held it against my chest for a long moment. Then I set it down, opened a fresh browser tab, and searched. Virginia property owner rights, occupant removal, 30-day notice. It was 3:47 a.m. on December 26th. My daughter was safe in her bed, and for the first time in 3 years, I knew exactly where I stood. On my own ground. The phone rang at 8:02 a.m. I was on my 2nd cup of coffee, sitting at the kitchen table with a legal pad full of notes, and Lily was still asleep. Caller ID, Judith Mercer. I let it ring 4 times. Then I picked up. Not because I wanted to talk, because I wanted to listen. Fiona. Her voice was warm, concerned, perfectly calibrated. The voice of a woman who had rehearsed her opening line. I was worried about you. You left so abruptly last night without even saying goodbye. That's not like you. I said nothing. Listen, I know the situation with Lily might have seemed harsh, but that child needs structure, Fiona. You coddle her. She made a very serious accusation at the dinner table, in front of the entire family, and she needed to understand that actions have consequences. I let the silence stretch. Judith filled it, as I knew she would. Derek already explained the account situation. He borrowed a small amount temporarily. He's going to pay it back. It's a family matter, Fiona. Lily had no business bringing it up in front of everyone. She embarrassed him. She embarrassed me. There it was. Not Lily was hurt. Not I went too far. Lily embarrassed her. I hear you, Judith. Good. So we can move past this. And Fiona? Her voice dropped half a register, the way it always did when she reached for her leverage. I shouldn't have to say this, but you do live on Mercer property. It would be very unfortunate if this kind of drama made that arrangement complicated. I looked at the quitclaim deed on the table in front of me, at Ryan's handwriting, at the county recorder's stamp. I understand, Judith. Thank you for calling. I hung up. She would replay that conversation in her head later and think she'd won. She'd think the threat had landed, that I was, once again, the quiet daughter-in-law who knew her place. She had no idea I'd just recorded every word. Virginia is a one-party consent state. I saved the file, time-stamped it, and added it to a new folder on my desktop. I named the folder Red. Derek texted at 10:14 a.m. No greeting, no punctuation, just venom. Who does your kid think she is? She eavesdrops on private conversations and then runs her mouth at Christmas dinner? You need to teach that girl her place. Fiona, I screenshotted it. Timestamp. Sender. Saved. A second message, 40 seconds later. If you make this into a thing, I will tell everyone about your mental breakdowns after Ryan died. Mom has it documented. Don't test me, screenshot. Save. I didn't bother wondering whether Judith actually had any documentation. It didn't matter. What mattered was that Derek, in writing, had just confirmed two things. He was afraid of what Lily said, and his first instinct was to threaten. A third text: "Without the Mercer family, you're just a night shift nurse with a kid who lies. Remember that screenshot? Save." I was halfway through organizing the folder when Grace called. Her voice had that tight, controlled quality she used when she was furious on someone else's behalf. "Fiona, are you online? Have you seen Facebook?" I hadn't. I opened it. Karen Mercer, Derek's wife, had posted 40 minutes ago in the Henley County Community Fellowship Group, 312 members. The post read, "Sad to share that our family gathering was disrupted this Christmas by a family member who chose to alienate a loving grandmother from her only grandchild. Please keep Judith in your prayers as she navigates this painful situation. Family should come first." 47 likes, 12 shares. A comment from someone named Brenda. "This is why family values are disappearing. Praying for Judith." I screenshotted the post, the comments, the share count, the timestamp. All of it went into the red folder. Grace said, "What are you going to do?" "Nothing, online." "And offline?" "I'm calling a lawyer." Grace showed up at noon with 2 coffees, a bag of cinnamon bagels, and a coloring book for Lily. That was Grace. She never arrived empty-handed, and she always thought about the kid first. Lily was on the living room floor, still in her pajamas, quiet but okay. She'd eaten breakfast. She hadn't mentioned last night. I hadn't pressed. There would be time for that conversation, with a professional in the room, not just me fumbling through it. Grace and I sat at the kitchen table with the door cracked, so we could hear Lily humming along to something on her tablet. I laid out everything: the sign, the photo, the texts from Derek, the call from Judith, Karen's Facebook post, and, finally, the deed. Grace picked up the quitclaim deed, read it twice, and set it down slowly. "Ryan did this?" 4 months before the accident. He never told me. Because he knew. Grace looked at me. "He knew his family, Fiona. And he made sure you'd have ground to stand on, literally." I stared at the yellow legal note in his handwriting and felt something crack behind my sternum. Not grief. I'd burned through the worst of that years ago. This was something closer to gratitude, sharp and aching. "You need Nathan Cordero," Grace said. "Real estate and trust law. My ex used him during the divorce. He's thorough, he's fast, and he doesn't do drama. He does documents." "I don't want a war, Grace. I just want Lily safe." Grace reached across the table and put her hand on mine. "This isn't a war. This is protecting what's yours. Ryan already handed you the shield. You just have to pick it up." I called Nathan Cordero's office at 12:34 p.m. His assistant said he could see me the next afternoon, December 27th, 2 p.m. I took the appointment. That night, after Lily fell asleep, I sat in the dark living room with the Christmas tree still blinking and the red folder in my lap. 7 items and counting, every one of them time-stamped. Every one of them backed up to the cloud, to a USB drive, and to a printed copy in an envelope I gave Grace to hold. I didn't know yet what Nathan Cordero would find when he looked deeper into the Mercer family's finances, but I had a feeling that what Lily overheard was only the beginning. To understand why I stayed quiet for 3 years, you need to understand the Mercer family. Ryan was the eldest son, the responsible one, the one who paid the property taxes on his mother's house when she forgot, the one who drove 4 hours to fix the plumbing on Thanksgiving weekend, the one who co-signed Derek's car loan when Derek was 23 and had already defaulted on a credit card. Derek was 5 years younger and operated under a different set of rules entirely. When Derek lost a job, it was bad luck. When Derek needed money, it was temporary. When Derek showed up to Christmas dinner with a new leather jacket and no explanation, nobody asked questions. Because asking questions in the Mercer family was considered a form of aggression. Ryan saw it. He never said it that bluntly, but I could read between the lines of what he told me. One night, about a year before he died, he said, "My dad set up a 529 for Lily, 47,000. Mom's listed as custodian because I was deployed when Dad filed the paperwork, but it's Lily's. I need you to know that." I asked why he was telling me like it was a warning. He just squeezed my hand and said, "Because my family loves the idea of money more than they love the people it's supposed to help." Harold Mercer, Ryan's father, died 2 years before Ryan. After Harold's passing, Judith became the gravitational center of the family, and her gravity had a preference. Derek was the moon she pulled closest. I was the comet she tolerated for orbit. Useful, distant, and expected to burn out quietly. When Ryan died, the first thing Judith asked me, not at the funeral, at the hospital, while I was still wearing the clothes I'd slept in for 2 days, was, "What's happening with the life insurance?" Not "how are you?" Not "how's Lily?" The life insurance. I used that money to pay Ryan's medical debt and keep Lily and me afloat. Judith suggested I share a portion with Derek, who was struggling. I said no. It was the only time I'd ever refused her directly, and she never forgot it. From that point on, the temperature dropped. Gradually, then all at once. Fewer invitations, shorter phone calls, comments at family gatherings just loud enough for me to hear. "Lily's getting so quiet. I wonder where she gets that from." And always underneath everything, the reminder, "You're living on Mercerland, Fiona. Don't forget who made that possible." I didn't forget. I just didn't know yet that it wasn't true. Nathan Cordero's office was on the second floor of a converted brick building on Main Street, above a bakery. The whole stairwell smelled like sourdough. It was the kind of detail my brain grabbed onto because the rest of me was running on 4 hours of sleep and an anxiety level I was managing through sheer professional discipline. He was mid-40s, neat desk, no family photos, just diplomas, and a Virginia state flag in the corner. He shook my hand, gestured to the chair, and said, "Tell me everything. Start with the property." I set the red folder on his desk and opened it like a patient chart. Deed first. Nathan examined the quitclaim deed for 2 minutes without speaking. He checked the notary seal, the recording stamp, the grantor and grantee lines. Then he pulled up the Henley County property records on his own screen, typed in the address, and turned the monitor toward me. "Ms. Mercer, this deed is valid and properly recorded. You are the sole legal owner of 26 Birchwood Drive and the 0.8-acre parcel it sits on. There is no encumbrance, no lien, and no co-owner." I exhaled. I hadn't realized I'd been holding my breath. "Now," he said, "tell me about the 529. I told him what I knew. Harold Mercer set it up for Lily, $47,000. Judith listed as custodian. Ryan believed the money was untouched. Lily overheard Derek talking about withdrawals. Nathan pulled up the 529 custodial account portal, asked me for the information I had, Lily's social security number, Harold's name as original contributor, and submitted an inquiry request to the financial institution managing the plan. "We'll have full transaction records within 5 to 7 business days," he said. Then he paused, pen hovering over his legal pad. "How much do you expect is left?" "I don't know." Lily heard Derek say he needed it. I'm hoping she misunderstood. "And if she didn't? Then I want every dollar accounted for." Nathan nodded and wrote something down. Then he looked up. "One more thing. I ran a standard check on your property. Your address, 26 Birchwood, is currently listed under a homestead exemption. Do you know who filed it?" I didn't file a homestead exemption. I didn't even know what one was until Nathan explained it. A tax reduction for a primary residence claimed by the property owner. Except I hadn't claimed it. Someone else had. "The filing is in the name of Judith Mercer," Nathan said, "using your address." The room went very quiet. The sourdough from downstairs suddenly smelled like something burning. "What does that mean?" "It means your mother-in-law has been claiming a tax benefit on property she does not own for approximately 3 years. He paused. "That's tax fraud, Ms. Mercer, at the county level." I sat in Nathan's chair and did the math without meaning to. 3 years of reduced property taxes on a home she didn't own. 3 years of a benefit she wasn't entitled to. Filed quietly, probably within weeks of Ryan's death, when I was too gutted to notice anything that didn't involve keeping Lily fed and showing up for my shifts. She hadn't just controlled me with the threat of taking the house away. She'd been profiting from the house, my house. "How much are we talking about?" I asked. Nathan pulled up the county assessor's website. Henley County's homestead exemption reduces annual property tax by roughly $2,800. Over 3 years, that's approximately $8,400 in back taxes owed, plus penalties, usually 25%. So we're looking at around $10,500 that Judith Mercer owes the county. He let that number sit. Miss Mercer, I want to be clear about your options. He ticked them off on his fingers, the way I'd seen surgeons count instruments. 1. You can send a 30-day notice to anyone occupying your property without authorization. That includes Derek's workshop on your land. 2. You can file a report with the county assessor regarding the fraudulent homestead exemption. 3. Depending on what the 529 records show, you can pursue civil action for the misappropriated education funds. Each of these is independent. You can do 1, 2, or all 3. I looked at the folder on his desk, the sign, the texts, the deed, the voicemail. All 3, I said. And everything goes by certified mail. Nathan paused his pen for the first time since I'd sat down. He studied me the way I studied patients who came in calm with a wound that should have had them screaming. I've been doing this for 20 years, he said. Family property disputes, trust issues, fraud cases, but 3 violations from the same household against the same person, that's not common. I'm an ER nurse, Mr. Cordero. I don't panic, I triage. He almost smiled. Then let's get this in writing. He opened a fresh legal pad, uncapped his pen, and we spent the next hour drafting 3 documents that would land on Judith and Derek Mercer's doorsteps by New Year's Eve. That night, after Nathan's office, after I'd picked Lily up from Grace's apartment and made us both grilled cheese with tomato soup, Lily's comfort order, I sat at the kitchen table at 11 p.m. and built my arsenal. I'm a nurse. I know how to chart. I know that documentation isn't just record keeping. It's the difference between a case and a story. And I was done telling stories to people who only heard what they wanted. I opened the red folder and laid everything out in chronological order. The quitclaim deed, recorded and stamped. The county property records printout. Ryan's handwritten note. The 529 account inquiry receipt from Nathan's office. Lily's text message and blurry photo from Christmas night, time-stamped 9:43 p.m. The cardboard sign, family disgrace. In Judith's handwriting, now sealed in a gallon Ziploc bag. The recorded phone call from Judith, December 26, 8:02 a.m. 3 screenshots of Derek's threatening texts, 10:14 to 10:16 a.m. Karen's Facebook post, and its 12 shares. The homestead exemption filing in Judith's name at my address, 10 items, each one labeled, dated, and stored in 3 locations. Cloud backup, USB drive in my bedside drawer, and a printed set in a sealed envelope at Grace's apartment. Nathan had prepared 3 outgoing documents, a 30-day notice to vacate addressed to Derek Mercer at the workshop on my property, a demand letter addressed to Judith Mercer for the full return of misappropriated 529 funds, and a formal complaint to the Henley County Assessor regarding the fraudulent homestead exemption. Each one ready for certified mail, return receipt requested. I paper-clipped the tracking slips to the front of the folder and closed it. There was one more thing I'd decided, something Nathan hadn't suggested. When I mailed the certified letters, I wouldn't just drop them at the post office. I would walk in, hand them across the counter, and watch the clerk stamp them. I wanted to feel the weight leave my hands. It wasn't about revenge. Revenge is loud. This was something quieter. This was consequence, addressed and postmarked. I want to pause here for a second. If you've been listening this far, you're probably sitting somewhere right now with your jaw tight and your chest heavy, because you've either lived this or you've watched someone you love go through it. I was right where you are. Sitting at this table, folder closed, heart open, terrified, and certain at the same time. If this story is hitting home, tap that like button so I know you're still with me. And if you've ever had to choose between keeping the peace and keeping your child safe, leave a comment. I'll read everyone. Now, back to December 28th. The Henley County Post Office on Route 12 was quiet the morning of December 28th. One clerk behind the counter, a woman in her 50s with reading glasses on a beaded chain, humming something I almost recognized as silver bells. I set 3 envelopes on the counter, each one white, legal-sized, with Nathan Cordero's return address printed in the upper left corner and the recipient's name typed cleanly below the window. Certified mail, return receipt requested, all 3. The clerk weighed each one, printed the green certified labels, and affixed them. She stamped each envelope with a satisfying thud, the kind of sound that reminds you the Postal Service has been delivering consequences since 1775. Envelope 1, 30-day notice to vacate, addressed to Derek Mercer, at the workshop structure on 26 Birchwood Drive. Envelope 2. Demand letter for the return of $42,800 in misappropriated 529 education funds, addressed to Judith Mercer, at 414 Maple Ridge Lane. Envelope 3. Formal complaint to the Henley County Assessor's Office regarding fraudulent homestead exemption filing by Judith Mercer. I paid $23.70 in postage. The clerk handed me 3 tracking receipts. I photographed each one, texted the tracking numbers to Nathan, and slid the receipts into the red folder. 3 envelopes, combined weight, less than 2 ounces each. But when they arrived, and they would arrive, because certified mail always does, they would carry the weight of every night I'd bitten my tongue at Judith's table, every time Derek had smirked at me across the room, every whispered, "Remember whose land you're on." I walked back to my car in the cold December air. My breath came out in clouds. The sky was that flat Virginia gray that means more cold is coming. I checked the USPS tracking app before I started the engine. Estimated delivery? December 30 to 31, right around New Year's Eve. There was something poetic about that. A year ending, a silence breaking, and 3 envelopes making their way through the system, unstoppable and indifferent, the way consequences ought to be. The property dispute was one thing, the money was another. But there was a layer underneath all of it that I couldn't address with certified mail. The fact that my daughter had been emotionally abused by a family member in a room full of adults who did nothing. I am a registered nurse. In the state of Virginia, I am a mandated reporter. That means if I have reasonable cause to suspect a child has been abused or neglected, I am legally required to report it. There is no exception for family. There is no exception for Christmas. On the afternoon of December 28th, after I dropped the envelopes at the post office, I called the Henley County Department of Social Services Child Protective Services hotline from my parked car. I gave them my name, my credentials, and a clear, factual account of what happened on December 25th. A 10-year-old child was publicly humiliated, forced to wear a degrading sign, denied food for approximately 6 hours, and isolated from other children as punishment for speaking the truth. I provided Lily's time-stamped photo from 9:43 p.m. I provided the physical sign, now preserved. I provided Judith's name, Derek's name, and the address where the incident occurred. The intake worker assigned a case number. A caseworker would contact me within 48 hours to schedule a child interview, with my consent, in an environment where Lily felt safe. I also called Lily's pediatrician that afternoon and got a referral for Dr. Amara Singh, a licensed child psychologist who specialized in family-related emotional trauma. First available appointment, January 3rd. I took it. I reported hundreds of suspected abuse cases during my career. I've called the hotline from curtained ER bays at 2 in the morning, whispering so the parent in the waiting room wouldn't hear. It never gets easier. But this time was different. This time, I wasn't calling about a stranger's child. I was calling about mine, and my hand didn't shake once. That evening I did something radical. I put the folder away. Not forever, just for the night. Because my daughter needed mac and cheese more than she needed a mother hunched over legal documents, and I had spent enough of the last 3 days being strategic. Lily deserved a few hours of me being just mom. We made it together. She stirred the cheese sauce while I boiled the noodles, and she told me about a book she was reading, The One and Only Ivan, about a gorilla in a mall who finds a way to change his life through a drawing. She talked about it the way she talked about everything she loved. Fast, with her whole body, hands gesturing, eyes wide, completely alive. Mom, Ivan doesn't yell at anyone. He just draws the truth and people finally see it. I almost dropped the colander. We ate on the couch with the Christmas tree still plugged in. I hadn't taken down the decorations. Normally I would have by now, but something about those little blinking lights felt necessary, like the house needed to remember that Christmas had started out okay, even if it ended somewhere terrible. Lily leaned into me, her plate balanced on her knees, and said, "Can we just stay like this?" Like what? Just us, in our house, with the lights on. Yeah, Lily, we can stay exactly like this. She fell asleep against my arm around 8:30. I carried her to bed, pulled the quilt up to her chin, and kissed her forehead. She smelled like cheese and shampoo, and 10 years of the best thing I'd ever done. I stood in the hallway outside her room for a moment, listening to her breathe. Then my phone buzzed. USPS tracking update. Envelope 1. Status, out for delivery. Estimated arrival, December 30th. Tomorrow. I turned off the hallway light, walked back to the kitchen, and let the silence settle around me like armor. Nathan called at 9:15 the next morning, December 29th. His voice had the same measured tone it always did, but I was starting to learn the difference between his confirming information voice and his "you need to hear this" voice. This was the second one. Miss Mercer, 2 updates. First, the county assessor's office has received your complaint. They've opened a review. Standard timeline is 10 business days for the initial assessment. If they confirm the homestead exemption was filed fraudulently, Judith will receive a notice of back taxes owed plus a 25% penalty, payment due within 90 days of the notice. I wrote the dates in the margin of my legal pad. 10 business days from December 28th, put the assessment around January 13th. Second, I've submitted the records request for the 529 custodial account. The financial institution confirmed receipt and will release full transaction history within 5 to 7 business days. Once we have that, we'll know exactly how much was withdrawn, when, and to what account. And if it's what we think it is? Then you have 2 options. A demand letter for voluntary repayment, which we've already sent. If they don't comply within 30 days, I file a civil action in Henley County General District Court. Given the amount, over $40,000, this goes beyond small claims. We'd be looking at a hearing, possibly a default judgment if they don't respond. How long would that take? If they don't contest, 6 to 8 weeks from filing to judgment. I did the math. Demand letter sent December 28th. 30-day deadline, January 27th. If no payment, Nathan files late January. Judgment by mid-March. Do it, I said. And Nathan, if they call your office trying to negotiate before the 30 days are up? I'll listen, but I don't negotiate without documentation of ability to pay and a signed repayment agreement. I'm not in the business of handshakes. Neither am I. Not anymore. I hung up, checked the USPS tracker one more time. Envelope 2 now showed in transit to destination, and circled January 27th on the kitchen calendar in red. 30 days. The clock was running. December 30th, 11:47 a.m., USPS, tracking updated. Envelope 2. Delivered. Signed by J. Mercer. I stared at the screen for exactly 4 seconds. Then I set the phone down, face up on the kitchen table, and waited. 43 minutes. That's how long it took. The first call came at 12:30 p.m. I didn't answer. Judith's voice on the voicemail was something I'd never heard before. Shrill, fraying at the edges, like someone who'd just discovered that the ground they'd been standing on belonged to someone else. Fiona, what is this? You sent me a demand letter? Through a lawyer? Over some misunderstanding about Lily's account? Call me back, right now. Voicemail. 2:12:38 p.m. Louder. Less polished. I am your mother-in-law. I raised the man you married, and you send me legal paperwork the week after Christmas? Do you have any idea how this looks? Voicemail 3:12:51 p.m. And this was the one I saved twice, on my phone and on the cloud, because Judith Mercer, the woman who had spent 3 years telling me that my daughter was a liar, said the following. Derek used that money to pay off his debts. I authorized it because he was in trouble, and that's what family does. I was going to put it back. It was a loan, Fiona. You're making this into something it isn't. I played it back. I authorized it. Not Derek acted alone. Not there's been a mistake. I authorized it. The woman who had forced my child to wear a sign that said, family disgrace, for telling the truth about stolen money had just admitted on a recorded voicemail that she knew about the stolen money all along. I time-stamped the voicemail. I added it to the red folder. And I did not call her back. Some evidence you have to chase. Some evidence just panics and runs straight to your phone. New Year's Eve, the kind of cold that makes the mailbox latch stick. USPS tracking, 10:22 a.m. Envelope 1, delivered. Signed by D. Mercer. Derek didn't call. Derek drove. At 11:40 a.m., I heard the crunch of gravel in the driveway, followed by a truck door slamming hard enough to rattle the Ring doorbell camera I'd installed 6 months earlier, originally because of a package thief, but God works in useful ways. I was in the kitchen. Lily was at Grace's apartment for the morning. I did not go to the door. He knocked. Then he pounded. Then he yelled, "Fiona, open this door! You can't do this! This is Mercer land! This workshop has been here since Dad was alive! You have no right!" The Ring camera recorded everything. I watched on my phone from 10 feet away, Derek, red-faced, pacing the porch, the certified letter crumpled in his fist. I called Henley County Non-Emergency Dispatch. "My name is Fiona Mercer, 26 Birchwood Drive. There's a man on my property who's been served a 30-day vacate notice and is now banging on my door and yelling. I'd like an officer to come ask him to leave." The deputy arrived in 12 minutes. I watched through the window as Derek went from screaming to sputtering to silent in the span of a single conversation with a uniformed officer. The deputy examined the notice, checked my ID, confirmed the property records on his in-car system, and told Derek to leave the premises. Derek jabbed a finger toward the house, toward me, and said something I couldn't hear from inside. The deputy wrote something in his notepad and repeated calmly that it was time to go. Derek left. I requested a copy of the incident report, case number 2024-1231-0087. Date, December 31st. Documenting, verbal disturbance, trespass after notice. 2 hours later, Grace texted me a screenshot. Derek had posted on his personal Facebook. "My sister-in-law just had the police called on me for going to my own family's property. She hired a lawyer and is trying to throw us off land that's been Mercer property for decades. All because her kid made up a story at Christmas. Please share so people know the truth. #family first. #injustice. 214 shares by midnight. I didn't post a response. I didn't comment. I didn't share. I just screenshotted everything, added it to the red folder, and watched the fireworks from my living room window while the clock struck 12. New year, new rules. The first 3 days of January felt like walking through a town that had already made up its mind. Judith's church friends had shared Karen's post into 2 more community groups. Derek's Facebook rant had hit the local buy-sell trade page. The narrative was clean and simple. Heartless daughter-in-law kicks grieving grandmother and beloved uncle off family land over a Christmas misunderstanding. No mention of a sign, no mention of a hungry child, no mention of $42,000. I noticed it first at the grocery store. Mrs. Liu from the PTA avoided eye contact at the deli counter. Then at work, a nurse from the day shift I barely knew said, "I heard things are rough with your in-laws. I'm sorry." The pity in her voice told me she'd only heard one version. The texts from extended Mercer relatives came in waves. Ryan's aunt. "Judith is devastated. She's barely eating. Is this really necessary?" Ryan's cousin. "You should think about what Ryan would want. He wouldn't want the family torn apart." A number I didn't recognize. "Shame on you for keeping a grandmother from her grandchild." I read everyone, responded to none. Then, on January 2nd, as I was pulling into my driveway after a 12-hour shift, I saw Mrs. Patterson standing at her mailbox next door. She was 70-something, widowed, the kind of neighbor who noticed everything but said very little. She'd lived on Birchwood Drive longer than anyone. She looked at me differently than the others, not with pity or judgment, more like recognition. "Fiona," she said, just that. Then, "I saw something on Christmas night, at Judith's house. I should have done something then, and I didn't. But if anyone ever asks me, I'll tell them exactly what I saw." She turned and walked back inside before I could respond. I sat in my car for a full minute, engine off, staring at her closed door. Then I added her name to the red folder's contact list, not as a weapon, but as a witness. There's a difference. The town had heard one story, Mrs. Patterson had seen another, and the system, slow, methodical, indifferent to Facebook shares, was still turning. January 2nd, 3 p.m., the CPS caseworker arrived at my home. Her name was Ms. Tate, mid-30s, calm presence, the kind of person who listened with her whole posture. She asked if she could speak with Lily in the living room while I sat in the kitchen. I agreed. Dr. Singh had already met with Lily the day before and said she was processing well, but I'd prepped Lily simply. A nice lady is going to ask you about Christmas night. You just tell the truth, like you always do. The interview lasted 22 minutes. I could hear murmuring through the wall, Lily's voice quiet but steady. No crying. When Ms. Tate came out, she sat across from me at the kitchen table and spoke in the neutral, careful language of someone documenting facts. Your daughter's account is consistent and detailed. She described the sign, the food restriction, the duration, and the family members present. She also described the events leading up to the punishment, specifically that she repeated something she overheard about a financial account. Ms. Tate paused. This is sufficient to open a formal investigation into emotional abuse and neglect, specifically public humiliation, food deprivation, and psychological intimidation of a minor. Judith Mercer and Derek Mercer will be named as subjects. Then she told me something I wasn't expecting. We received a second report this morning. A neighbor, a Mrs. Patterson on Birchwood Drive. She contacted our office independently. She states she witnessed your daughter being brought outside to the front porch at approximately 9 p.m. on Christmas night, in freezing temperatures, wearing only a dress. She heard an adult female voice. She identified it as Mrs. Judith Mercer, shouting at the child, and she provided a cell phone video. Ms. Tate let that sit. The video is 23 seconds. It was taken through Mrs. Patterson's kitchen window from across the yard. It does not clearly show the child's face, which protects her privacy. But it does capture the voice, the timestamp, 9:07 p.m. on December 25th, and the approximate conditions. I pressed my palms flat on the table. 23 seconds of footage I didn't know existed, from a witness I hadn't asked, corroborating everything my daughter said. Judith had spent a week telling anyone who would listen that Lily was a liar, that I was unstable, that this was a misunderstanding. 23 seconds doesn't misunderstand anything. Ms. Tate explained the next steps. The investigation would include attempted interviews with Judith and Derek, a review of the evidence, and a determination within 30 days. During that period, the subjects would be advised that unsupervised contact with Lily was not recommended. I walked Ms. Tate to the door. She shook my hand and said, "Your daughter is articulate and brave. You should know that." "She gets it from her father," I said. And meant it. I need to stop here for a moment. Because when Ms. Tate told me about Mrs. Patterson's video, I sat in my kitchen and stared at the wall for a long time. Not because I was surprised someone saw, but because I was gutted that someone saw, and almost didn't speak up. Mrs. Patterson did, though. Late, but she did. And it mattered. If you're still here, subscribe, not for me, for the part of the story that's coming. Because what happens next is the part where the certified letters start doing their job, and the people who thought they were untouchable find out they're not. Stay with me. January 15th, a Tuesday. I was between patients at the hospital, charting in the break room, cold coffee, fluorescent lights, when Nathan called. County assessor completed their review. The homestead exemption filed by Judith Mercer on your property has been determined to be fraudulent. She had no ownership interest in 26 Birchwood Drive at any point during the filing period. I put my pen down. Effective today, the county is issuing a notice to Judith Mercer for back taxes totaling approximately $8,400, plus a 25% civil penalty of $2,100. Total due, $10,500. Payment deadline, 90 days. I didn't say anything for a moment. Nathan waited. He was good at that. She's going to say she didn't know. She signed the form, Ms. Mercer, annually, for 3 years. The assessor's office has her signature on file. 3 signatures. 3 years of claiming a tax break on a home she didn't own, a home she used as a leash to keep me compliant. Every time she'd said, "Remember whose property you're on," she'd been collecting a discount on it. Nathan continued. The notice will be mailed to her address at 414 Maple Ridge Lane. Sincerely doubt she'll be in a festive mood when it arrives. He was right. Judith called my phone 4 times that evening. I didn't answer any of them. The voicemails were a study in deterioration, the first one indignant. "This is your doing, Fiona." The second one bargaining. "We can work this out if you just drop the complaint." The third one threatening. "I will tell everyone what kind of person you really are." And the fourth one something I'd never heard from Judith Mercer in all the years I'd known her. Silence. 12 seconds of open line. Then a click. That silence told me more than all her words ever had. It was the sound of a woman realizing that the system doesn't care about your reputation, your church group, or how many people shared your daughter-in-law's smear campaign on Facebook. The system cares about signatures. And Judith's were on file. January 20th, Nathan's office. Same sourdough smell in the stairwell, different weight in the room. He had a printed spreadsheet waiting for me on the desk, 4 pages, each line a transaction. The 529 custodial account records had come back. 23 withdrawals, Nathan said, turning the first page toward me. Over an 18-month period, beginning June of last year and ending November. Total withdrawn, $42,800. I looked at the columns. Date, amount, receiving account. Every single withdrawal routed to the same bank account, a personal checking account at Valley Federal, in the name of Derek P. Mercer. The custodian authorization was signed by Judith Mercer, Nathan continued. She granted Derek direct access to the account, which under 529 regulations is only permissible for qualified education expenses of the named beneficiary, in this case, Lily. And none of this went to Lily's education. Not a cent. The withdrawal descriptions are blank. No tuition invoices, no textbook receipts, no school supply documentation. These were straight cash transfers to Derek's personal account. $42,800. My father-in-law Harold, a man who had worked overtime at a paper mill for 30 years, had saved that money so his granddaughter could go to college. And it was gone. Funneled into whatever hole Derek had dug for himself, with Judith holding the shovel. What do we do? I asked, though I already knew. The demand letter gave them until January 27th to return the funds. As of today, we've received no payment, no response, and no communication from their attorney, if they have one. On January 28th, I file a civil action in Henley County General District Court. Complaint for conversion and breach of fiduciary duty. We're requesting return of the full $42,800 plus attorney's fees, court costs, and the 10% IRS early withdrawal penalty, which Judith, as custodian, is personally liable for. He slid a document across the desk. The filing was already drafted. Total judgment will be seeking approximately $46,350. I signed the authorization. January 27th came and went. Not a dollar arrived, not a phone call to Nathan's office, nothing. On the morning of January 28th, Nathan filed the complaint. The court doesn't shout. It stamps, it files, it dates, and then it sends a man to your door. January 31st, a Friday. The process server arrived at 26 Birchwood Drive at 2:14 p.m. Derek was in the workshop. He'd been dragging his feet on moving out, still within his 30-day window, but clearly testing every edge of it. The workshop door was open. I could hear his music from the kitchen, some country station, turned up too loud, the way people do when they're pretending everything is fine. The process server was a compact man in a gray jacket, entirely unremarkable, carrying a manila envelope that was about to rearrange Derek Mercer's year. He walked across the gravel, knocked on the workshop door frame, and said Derek's full name. I watched from the kitchen window. I'm not proud of how closely I watched, but I'm not sorry either. Derek stepped out, wiping his hands on a rag. He looked at the envelope. He looked at the process server. His face cycled through confusion, irritation, and then something deeper, recognition. The recognition of a man who had been expecting this moment on some level, but had convinced himself it wouldn't actually come. What is this? Civil summons, Henley County General District Court. You've been named as co-defendant in a complaint for conversion and breach of fiduciary duty. You've been served, sir. Derek didn't take the envelope. The server placed it on the workbench, noted the refusal on his form, and walked back to his car. Under Virginia law, the service was valid. Mrs. Patterson was at her mailbox. She saw the whole thing. She didn't wave at Derek. She didn't look away either. She just stood there, holding her mail, bearing witness the way good neighbors eventually do. Derek called Judith. I know this because within 20 minutes, Judith's silver Buick pulled up to the edge of my driveway and stopped, because the gate was closed. I had installed a simple latch gate across the driveway entrance the week before. Nothing dramatic, just a metal gate with a padlock that said, clearly and legally, "This is private property. and you need permission to enter. Judith stood outside that gate for 4 minutes. I timed it. She gripped the metal rail with both hands. She looked at the house, my house, with an expression I had never seen on her face. Not anger, not indignation, fear. She got back in her car and drove away without a word. I closed the kitchen curtain, sat down at the table, and exhaled for what felt like the first time in 5 weeks. January 30th was the deadline, 30 days from the notice to vacate. Derek's lawyer, a bargain rate attorney Judith apparently found through a church contact, had advised him in writing to comply. I knew this because Nathan received a copy of the counsel's letter, which essentially said, "My client acknowledges the property owner's legal right to possession and will vacate the workshop premises by the stated date." The tone was stiff, the letterhead was generic, and between every line I could read the subtext. We have no case, and we know it. Derek showed up at 8 a.m. with a rented U-Haul trailer and the kind of furious silence that men default to when they've lost control of a situation they never actually controlled. He loaded tools, scrap wood, a workbench, 2 space heaters, and what looked like several months' worth of energy drink cans. He did not knock on my door. He did not make eye contact with the Ring doorbell camera, though it captured every trip between the workshop and the trailer in crisp 1080p. Grace came over at 10. She brought coffee and stood next to me on the front porch, not to gloat, just to be there. That was Grace's whole philosophy: you don't have to do hard things alone. At 12:17 p.m., Derek closed the trailer hatch. He walked to his truck, opened the door, then turned and looked at the house one more time. "You're going to regret this, Fiona," he said. Not shouting, his voice was flat, tired. "You have no family now." Grace, still holding her coffee, tilted her head. "You forgot the trash bags in the corner. Want me to toss them, or should I bill you for disposal?" Derek slammed the truck door and pulled out. I walked into the empty workshop. It smelled like motor oil and sawdust. There was damage, a hole punched in the drywall, a cracked window pane. I photographed everything, dated it, and sent it to Nathan. If needed, it would become part of the property damage claim. I locked the workshop door with a new padlock, stood there in the cold, keys in my hand, and looked around at the 0.8 acres that Ryan had quietly, carefully deeded to me before he ran out of time. Ours. Fully, finally, unchallengeably ours. In the weeks that followed, the consequences arrived the way consequences usually do, not all at once, but in a steady, documentable sequence that made the Facebook narrative very difficult to sustain. Judith's homestead exemption fraud resulted in a county bill of $10,500. She had 90 days to pay. She did not have $10,500. I know this because Nathan received a letter from Judith's newly hired attorney requesting a good faith extension on behalf of his client, citing unexpected financial hardship. The county assessor does not negotiate good faith. They negotiate payment plans with interest. CPS completed their investigation in mid-February, finding substantiated emotional abuse and neglect by Judith Mercer against a minor child. Derek Mercer was listed as a contributing party. The recommendation: no unsupervised contact with Lily, pending completion of a court-approved family counseling program. Judith did not enroll. Derek's civil judgment came down in March. He didn't show up to court. Nathan requested a default judgment, and the judge granted it. $42,800 in misappropriated 529 funds, plus $3,200 in attorney's fees and court costs, plus the applicable IRS penalty. Total, $46,350. Nathan began wage garnishment proceedings the following week. Derek, who had just started a warehouse job, would be paying that judgment back for years. Karen, Derek's wife, found out during the court proceedings exactly how much of Lily's college fund Derek had drained, and where it had actually gone. She didn't post about it on Facebook. She moved back to her mother's house in February, and filed for legal separation in March. I didn't take pleasure in that. I understood it. The extended Mercer relatives went quiet. Not apologetic, just quiet. The kind of silence that settles over a family when the smear campaign hits a wall of notarized documents, court records, and a county tax bill. Nobody shared Derek's Facebook post anymore. It was still up, technically. But facts have a way of making noise feel very small. The call came the first week of February. A Saturday morning. Lily was at the kitchen table drawing, and I was washing dishes. When I saw Judith's name on the screen, I dried my hands, walked to the bedroom, and closed the door. I picked up. One last time. Fiona. Her voice was different, smaller. The polish was gone, no church voice, no rehearsed warmth, just a 62-year-old woman who had lost her oldest son and was now watching the rest of her world follow. I know I don't have the right to call you. You don't. A long pause. I could hear her breathing. I made a mistake. With Lily, with the sign. I was angry and I went too far. I know that now. I waited. Please, she's all I have left of Ryan. Don't take her from me. I closed my eyes. Not because I felt sorry for her, though part of me understood the grief underneath the cruelty, but because I had to say the next words very precisely, and I didn't want emotion in any direction to blur them. Judith, I'm not taking Lily from you. I'm protecting her from what you did. Those are not the same thing. Silence. When you're ready to work with a family therapist, a licensed professional, not Pastor Dave, and when you've completed the counseling program CPS recommended, you can contact Nathan Cordero's office to discuss supervised visitation. You do not contact me. You do not contact Lily. You go through the process. Fiona? That's my boundary. It is not negotiable. I hung up. The call lasted 47 seconds. I know because I checked the call log afterward and added it to the red folder. Force of habit. I sat on the edge of my bed for a minute. My hands were steady, my jaw ached from clenching. The house was quiet except for Lily humming in the kitchen, something from a cartoon, I think, slightly off-key and entirely perfect. Family is not a sign around a child's neck. Family is the person who takes it off. In March, I opened a new 529 account. Same state plan, same goal, different custodian. Me. I transferred the remaining $4,200 from the original account, what was left of Harold's $47,000, into the new one. It wasn't much. It was a fraction of what Lily was supposed to have, but it was clean, and it was protected, and no one had access to it except me and the financial institution. Nathan set up the wage garnishment order on Derek's paycheck. The math was simple and relentless. A percentage of every check, automatically deducted, routed to a recovery account tied to the judgment. Derek would be paying back what he stole for a long time. The court didn't ask whether he was comfortable with that. Courts don't. I also met with a financial advisor through the hospital's employee assistance program, free for staff, something I'd never used because I'd never had the headspace. She helped me set up an automatic monthly contribution to Lily's new 529, $150 a month. Small, but consistent. At 7% average growth, compounded over 8 years, Lily would have a meaningful start when she turned 18. It won't be $47,000 by then, the advisor said. It doesn't have to be, it just has to be hers. That same week, I went back to Ryan's box one more time. Not for documents, for the letter at the very bottom, the one I'd noticed on December 26th, but hadn't been ready to open. It was sealed, with Lily, 18th birthday, written on the front in Ryan's blocky print. I broke my own rule. I opened it. And I read it standing in the hallway, one hand on the wall, because the floor felt unsteady. Lilybug. If you're reading this, you're 18, and I probably owe you an explanation for a lot of things. But here's the one that matters. You are worth every good thing this world has to offer. Don't let anyone tell you that you don't deserve a seat at the table. Your mom and I made sure you'd always have a place. Trust her. She's the toughest person I've ever met, and she doesn't even know it. I love you past the moon. Dad. I refolded the letter, slid it back into the envelope, and placed it in the box next to the deed. For the first time in 3 years, I cried. Not the drowning kind, the kind that washes something clean. April arrived the way it does in Virginia, slowly, then all at once. One morning, the dogwood outside our kitchen window was bare sticks. The next, it was covered in white blossoms that made Lily press her face to the glass and say, "It looks like it snowed flowers, Mom." I finally took down the Christmas lights on the first Saturday of the month. Lily helped, standing on a step stool, carefully unwinding each strand. She asked if we could leave one string up year-round. Just the little ones, by the front door. I said yes. Some lights are worth keeping. She was seeing Dr. Singh every 2 weeks now. The therapist told me Lily was processing with remarkable resilience, which in plain language meant my daughter was tougher than anyone had given her credit for. She'd started a journal, not because anyone told her to, but because she wanted to. She said writing things down helped her put them somewhere that isn't my chest. At school, she'd joined the 5th grade book club. Her first recommendation to the group was the one and only Ivan. Her teacher emailed me. Lily presented the book to the class today with a confidence I haven't seen from her before. She said it's about telling the truth even when it's hard. She's becoming a real voice in this classroom. The workshop, Derek's workshop, I spent a weekend cleaning it out. Grace helped. We patched the drywall, replaced the cracked window, swept the sawdust. Lily stood in the doorway when we were done and looked around. Can this be my art room? We painted it together the following weekend. Pale blue walls, because Lily said blue was the color of thinking. I hung a pegboard for her supplies and put a desk by the window where the light was best. Grace came for dinner every Thursday. She'd bring dessert. Lily would set the table. The 3 of us would sit in the kitchen, eating and talking about nothing in particular. School, patience, whatever Grace was watching on TV, and every time I'd look around the table and think, this is what safe looks like. Not loud, not perfect, not a performance for anyone else. Just 3 people in a house that had their name on it, with the doors locked and the lights on. Saturday morning, May. The kitchen smelled like butter and maple syrup because Lily had decided she was old enough to flip pancakes by herself, and she was mostly right. Only one landed on the stovetop. We sat at the table by the window. Sun came through the glass in warm slats across the wood. The dogwood was in full bloom. Lily was barefoot, hair still messy from sleep, drawing on a paper napkin between bites. I watched her work, tongue slightly out, brow furrowed, the same face Ryan used to make when he was concentrating. She drew a house. Simple. Rectangle, triangle roof, a door with a round knob. 2 stick figures out front, one tall, one small. A tree beside them with pink circles for blossoms. Across the bottom, in careful block letters, our house. She slid it across the table. For you. I picked it up, looked at the 2 figures, at the tree, at the 2 words that said more than any legal filing, any court judgment, any voicemail saved in a red folder on a shelf. I love it, I said. I know exactly where this goes. That afternoon, I opened Ryan's box one more time. I placed Lily's napkin drawing inside, next to the deed, next to his letter, next to the yellow legal note that started everything. The box wasn't heavy anymore. It wasn't something I avoided on the top shelf of the closet. It was proof, not of what we'd lost, but of what we'd walked through. Judith never called Nathan's office. Maybe she would someday. Maybe she'd do the work, and maybe there'd be a supervised visit at a therapist's office, and maybe Lily would decide what she wanted that relationship to look like. That was Lily's choice to make, when she was ready. Not mine, not Judith's, not Derek's. The red folder sat on the bookshelf in the living room, closed. I didn't hide it. I didn't display it. It was just there, the way a fire extinguisher is there. You hope you never need it again, but you keep it where you can reach it. I took a bite of pancake. Lily was already drawing something new, this time a gorilla with kind eyes, surrounded by other animals, all of them free. The lights by the front door blinked once, then held steady. We were home. Thank you for staying until the end. This story is fiction, but the feeling of being betrayed by the people who were supposed to protect you, that's as real as it gets. If you're out there right now, setting a boundary for the first time, or thinking about opening a box you've been avoiding, or just trying to keep your kids safe in a world that doesn't always help, I see you. You're not alone. Like this video if it meant something. Subscribe if you want more. And check the description below. There's another story waiting for you. Also about a mother. Also about a piece of paper that changed everything. I'll see you there.